Book nibbles. Big ideas, small bites. Tara Westover's Educated is the story of a girl raised on the isolated slopes of Bucks Peak in rural Idaho, the youngest daughter of a fiercely survivalist Mormon family, who through improbable determination and a love of learning manages to break free from an insular world of paranoia, violence, and ignorance, eventually earning a PhD from Cambridge University. Yet the heart of the memoir is not simply the tale of intellectual ascent. It is the deeper story of family bonds warped by fear, of memory clashing with truth, of what happens when loyalty to kin collides with the necessity of self-invention, and of how knowledge can both liberate and estrange. Westover writes with clarity and honesty, expanding the scope of her personal narrative into questions that strike at every reader. What does it mean to belong? When is it right to sever ties? How does one reconcile the love for family with the damage they inflict? Her memoir is both personal confession and universal parable. Tara was born in 1986, the youngest of 7 children, though the exact date is fuzzy, as her father distrusted government records and never registered her birth. This absence of documentation is a symbol of her childhood. She lived outside the state, beyond the reach of hospitals, schools, and law enforcement, existing in a bubble of her father's making. Gene, her father, she uses pseudonyms for family members, was a survivalist who believed the government was corrupt, doctors were dangerous, and schools were instruments of brainwashing. He stockpiled food, prepared for the end of days, and raised his family to be self-reliant. Faye, her mother, was an herbalist and midwife, who gradually built a local reputation as a healer, both out of belief and because her husband refused doctors even in the gravest emergencies. In this world, Tara grew up unvaccinated, untreated, and uneducated by any formal system. Her classroom was the junkyard where her father put her to work, tossing scrap metal into heaps, often with reckless disregard for safety. Her textbooks were the Bible, the Book of Mormon, and whatever old volumes happened to be lying around. Her childhood is marked by accidents so extreme they seem almost unbelievable, yet she insists they are true. Her father would order her and her brothers to work near heavy machinery with no protective gear. In one scene, she recalls being thrust into the path of a shearing machine and nearly crushed. Her brother's clothing caught in rotating blades, scalping him badly. In another, her father drives recklessly home from town, convinced that angels will protect them, and the car flips violently, leaving the children bloodied. Time and again, the family suffers catastrophic injuries, concussions, burns, broken bones, yet never once does Jean allow a trip to the hospital. Instead, Faye applies herbal poultices, oils, and tinctures, sometimes saving lives through sheer luck, sometimes leaving permanent scars. Tara grows up believing this is normal, that divine will determines survival, and that to seek professional care is betrayal. What emerges early in the memoir is Tara's divided identity. On one hand, she is a dutiful daughter loyal to her father's teachings, singing hymns with her mother, working alongside her brothers. On the other, she is a child with curiosity that cannot be contained. She hides away books, devouring them in secret. She dreams of a wider world. Yet every time her mind drifts towards school or possibility, her father's voice intrudes. Public education is a plot. Women's duty is to bear children. Obedience is survival. This tension between loyalty and yearning defines the entire arc of her story. The danger in her home is not only from machines but also from her older brother Sean. Charming when he wanted to be, he could also be explosively violent. He dragged Tara by the hair, shoved her head into toilets, twisted her wrist until it nearly broke. He demeaned her, calling her a whore for wearing lip gloss or a short-sleeve shirt, making her feel sinful for even imagining herself as female. The abuse was physical and psychological, unpredictable yet constant enough to erode her sense of worth. What deepened the wound was her parents' refusal to acknowledge it. When Tara finally gathered courage to speak of Sean's brutality, her parents sided with him, accusing her of lying, of being possessed by Satan, of seeking to destroy the family. This gaslighting created the central paradox of her life. She knew her reality, yet those she trusted most denied it. The memoir thus becomes as much about reclaiming memory as about pursuing knowledge. A turning point arrives when one of her brothers, Tyler, leaves for college. He urges Tara to study, to take the ACT, to believe she might belong in the world of learning. At first the idea seems absurd. She has had almost no formal schooling. She cannot write an essay or solve algebra. But with sheer determination, she begins to teach herself, poring over textbooks, memorizing formulas, studying for the exam. Her father mocks her, insisting education is a trap, but her mother allows her just enough space. Tara fails her first attempt, but she persists. Eventually, she scores high enough to gain admission to Brigham Young University. The moment she leaves home is one of both terror and exhilaration. She is stepping into a world she has only imagined, carrying within her both the hunger for knowledge and the heavy chains of her upbringing. Her arrival at BYU is almost surreal. She knows nothing of cultural norms, academic etiquette, or even basic historical facts. In her first lectures, she is bewildered when professors refer to terms she has never encountered. Once, in a Western civilization class, a professor mentions the Holocaust. Tara raises her hand and asks what that word means. The room falls silent. Students assume she is mocking them. She burns with shame, realizing that she is decades behind, her ignorance exposed. Yet this moment also fuels her resolve. She begins to spend countless hours in the library, teaching herself everything from scratch. Slowly, she climbs from humiliation to competence. Her lack of social knowledge is just as striking. She dresses in outdated, handmade clothes, struggles with friendships, and has almost no understanding of dating or relationships. Yet she also experiences kindness. Roommates help her learn basic hygiene habits she had never been taught. Professors notice her raw intelligence. One, impressed by her essays, encourages her to apply for study abroad at Cambridge. Another steers her toward graduate opportunities. These mentors become crucial bridges, showing her that her mind is not only adequate but exceptional. Still, her past does not release her easily. Each time she returns home, she is dragged back into the cycle of violence and denial. Sean resumes his abuse. Her parents close ranks, insisting that her new life is proof she has been corrupted. At times she nearly believes them. When she earns recognition at BYU, when she receives scholarships, part of her feels guilty, as though she is betraying her family's faith. The push-pull between education and loyalty tears at her, causing breakdowns, depression, and long periods of self-doubt. Her journey to Cambridge is both an escape and a revelation. There, under the guidance of scholars, she discovers not just facts but a new way of seeing. She studies philosophy, history, and politics, realizing that knowledge is not just information but perspective. She learns about oppression, patriarchy, trauma, concepts that give her language for her own experiences. The abuse she endured, the silencing, the control. Suddenly these are not isolated incidents but part of broader human patterns. The effect is liberating, yet it also widens the gulf with her family. Each new insight makes it harder to fit back into the narrative they demand. A particularly wrenching scene occurs when Tara confronts her parents about Sean's violence, armed now with the confidence of her new education. Rather than listen, they accuse her of false memory, of being manipulated by evil influences. Her father writes letters casting her as a sinner, her mother withdraws, and eventually the family begins to disown her. The pain of this severance is acute. Tara loves them still. Her father's eccentric charisma, her mother's quiet care, her siblings' companionship, but she cannot deny the truth of what she has lived. The central tension crystallizes. To remain loyal is to betray herself. To be true to herself is to lose her family. Her memoir builds toward the moment when she must choose. On one side is the pull of kinship, the voice of her father calling her back to obedience, the hope that if she just submits she can belong again. On the other side is the recognition that submission would mean erasing herself, denying both memory and mind. With enormous anguish, she chooses to stand apart. She will not return to the mountain. She will not allow her family's narrative to overwrite her own. This decision costs her dearly. She is estranged from parents and many siblings. Yet it also grants her life. She completes her doctorate at Cambridge, traveling further from Bucks Peak than she once imagined possible, not just in miles but in identity. Throughout Educated, Westover wrestles with the slipperiness of memory. She recounts events, accidents, confrontations, moments of violence, while acknowledging that her siblings sometimes remember differently. She reflects on how trauma distorts recollection, how families construct myths to preserve themselves, how truth is contested terrain. The memoir is not a courtroom brief but a meditation on the very act of remembering, on the courage it takes to claim one's story when others deny it. The book's power lies not only in the drama of its plot, though the accidents, abuse, and triumphs are gripping, but in its insights into education itself. For Tara, education is not merely formal schooling but the process of learning to think, to question, to assert. It is learning to ask why, to examine authority, to refuse easy answers. Education is what allows her to see her father's rants about the government not as prophecy but as paranoia. It is what allows her to understand Sean's abuse not as her fault but as violence. It is what enables her to break the cycle of silence. In this sense, the memoir is less about graduating from universities than about the ongoing struggle to educate oneself into authenticity. The prose is at once stark and lyrical, reflecting the harsh beauty of Idaho's mountains and the stark pain of her memories. She writes with a mixture of love and critique. She remembers the smell of sagebrush, the grandeur of the peak, the moments of family laughter. Yet she does not shy away from describing the burns, the blood, the terror. This duality captures the complexity of family. How one can cherish the same people who cause deep harm, how belonging and betrayal intertwine. The lessons from Educated extend beyond her personal story. Many readers find echoes of their own struggles. The difficulty of breaking from family expectations, the battle between loyalty and selfhood, the challenge of defining truth when authority denies it. Tara's story shows that education in its deepest sense is the act of stepping into one's own narrative, of refusing to be defined by others. It is a reminder that learning is not always comfortable, that growth often requires rupture, that the pursuit of knowledge can demand immense courage. The memoir closes with Tara reflecting on the person she has become. She is no longer the girl from Buck's Peak, though she carries that girl within her. She is a woman shaped by the mountain but not confined by it. She has learned to value her own mind, to trust her memory, to accept the painful cost of authenticity. Education for her is not a destination but a lifelong act of self-creation. She writes, "You could call this selfhood many things. Transformation, metamorphosis, falsity, betrayal. I call it an education." What makes Educated resonate so powerfully is its honesty about the cost of freedom. Tara does not romanticize her escape. She admits the loneliness, the grief, the loss. Yet she also insists that to live truthfully is worth the price. The story, ultimately, is not only about leaving a mountain in Idaho but about the universal human journey to claim one's voice against the forces that would silence it. And that's it. Tara Westover's Educated. Thanks for listening to Book Nibbles. If you enjoyed this bite-sized book, don't forget to subscribe for more quick, insightful summaries. See you in the next nibble.